Hello everyone, Jerrel from Sun Grand here. I'm a game developer, and I make commercial and homebrew games, so I make stuff for old consoles like the Game Boy Advance, PSP, DS, all that old stuff. I love that. Today I'm going to be discussing the recently released trailer for the new Mario and Luigi RPG, Brothership. I think it's really interesting. What really caught me immediately was the visual aesthetic that they've gone for, especially with the two characters. So there's going to be a lot of videos online covering things like Easter eggs and references. My video will not be covering that. My video will be taking a look at this trailer from a game developer standpoint. So something that I was absolutely fascinated with right off the get-go was they fooled me. I believed that the visual shader that they use. The shader is basically a special part of the game that gives the game renderer instructions on how to render a character visually. And I believed that they were using a special shader that created this sort of visual color gradients so that things were just significantly darker at the bottom and lighter at the top, creating this really visually engaging, very interesting visual look to it, a visual dynamic. And you see that with the cuffs here, and then the hat says they're sort of blue and darker here and lighter as they go up. That is not something that occurs naturally, normally in a renderer engine with a sort of a standard renderer. And so I was fooled, and I thought, well, they've created this really fascinating thing, and it turns out those are hand painted in. And I'm realizing after completing my analysis here, is that they've approached the visual aesthetic for the characters from a 2D standpoint much more than they did a 3D. And I've been working in 3D for so long now that my brain naturally gravitated towards, oh yeah, they're using, complex shaders and this and that. No, it's hand painted, and I think they do that to match the style of the box art that we've seen previously from Mario and Luigi games, and I really like it. I really respect the decisions they've made here. It's really fantastic. Something I noticed are the black outlines on the characters. One of the first things that stands out to me back in the days of the 3DS, and I was a 3DS developer. Many games used a black outline due to the lower resolution of the 3DS, and developers wanted to make sure that their characters stood out significantly from the background, especially we see in Super Smash Bros. Where there's so much going on visually. The black outline helps the characters stand out. And I was wondering, why are we using them these days, especially on the Switch where we don't really need them? And my guess was, well, maybe there are going to be scenes where the camera pans out significantly, and they really want the characters to stand out and pop. And I assume because the game environments have such rich colors, it's easy for Mario and Luigi to blend in, especially since Luigi is primarily green, and green is the most naturally occurring color in natural environments in games, and Luigi would have a harder time standing out, so I believe that's why they would have the black outline there. And you see that later in the trailer where the camera really pans out, and you can see that it does really help there. So I'll find some other scenes. This scene in particular, where the camera really pans out. Sorry for jumping around so much here. And you'll see the camera really pulls out to a far distance, and that having that black outline does actually help the characters stand out a bit here. So I'll go ahead and just pause that, and you can see it does really help them pop a little bit, stand out a bit. And I thought, they were using really advanced stuff, but it's really just very good artistic decisions and hand painted. The highlights on the shoes are hand painted in, so no matter what angle the characters are in terms of the light or dark, they're going to be interesting. You see they hand painted this a hint of a blue. You wouldn't call it a highlight, but it's sort of a hand painted just visual element, and it does make it look like the old box art for these games. You can see the hint of the blue towards the end of the hat, and it's adds so much to the visual dynamic. In my games, when I go for a more realistic visual style. I use reflections, and I have the shadows be a blue color, and all of that, has performance costs. But here they've hand painted it in, and that is a much cheaper way in terms of performance. So it really does make the characters stand out. It's really great. So I've been harping on about that, but I just think it's so great. Something I've noticed about the shadows, very similar to the Zelda video that I just pointed, but this handles it much better, is that Mario and Luigi do not cast the same shadows as everyone else. They cast their shadows directly straight down as opposed to being dependent on the angle of the light. And I have an example here. Let's see. At 45, I think, is a good example here. As you can see the light being cast at an angle. You can see the light sources coming in from here. But for sort of objects that are important in terms of platforming, you can see that a shadow is being cast straight down, and that is to aid with jumping accuracy to help you place your jumps. Despite the fact that here's another good example where the lighting is coming from over here and the environment is receiving their shadows being cast that way. Mario and Luigi cast their shadows straight down. You can see that with the NPCs as well. So I would say this game handles it better than Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, where it's just a straight circle for Zelda, and the NPCs are still casting realistic shadows in that. Whereas this one, I think they handle it a bit better because the NPCs all have the same design philosophy, so it's more coherent visually. Something that I think is pretty funny, I just noticed this, is distance culling for objects. This happens in every 3D game. When objects are too far from the camera, they disappear. This is to save on the rendering cost. When something appears on screen, it means that the hardware has to spend time rendering it, and there's a cost to that. If you have too many things on screen, it causes slowdowns. So when you get far enough, they disappear. But what's pretty funny is in this little bit here is that you can see the characters pop out of existence as the camera pulls back from the tower. I just thought that was cute and funny. That's just something that has to happen in games. I'm willing to bet, because these games are always so polished, I'm willing to bet they may either just leave it, or they may polish that up, and they'll have it to where it's replaced by a lower poly count version, a significantly lower poly count, so that it's still easy for the system to draw. But it looks less jarring. But these days we're kind of accustomed to seeing that, so it's just funny. It's one of the funny parts of the gaming industry is we kind of accept certain things, like things just sort of popping out of existence, because we know that the hardware has limitations. So I want to just briefly discuss. This is a little might be a little just too technical for looking at a video pretty quickly, but I just want to quickly discuss the visual effects, the image screen shaders that I see in the trailer here, and why I believe the developers for this game have a very strong understanding of developing on the Switch and creating something that's going to be very performant. It looks like these games always rely heavily on timing, especially for the battle system. So what I see for the screen shaders is a bit of bloom, and that sort of blends and softens the light, and that's like an absolute standard these days. You kind of have to have bloom or your game looks pretty flat. I see chromatic aberration, especially right here, when the game wants to get blurry. Instead of using a blur, it uses chromatic aberration to sort of make that background appear sort of blurry. I do like that effect. And there's a faux atmospheric density. So atmospheric density in games sort of takes into account, simulating a sense of moisture in the atmosphere if there's any dust, any air particulates, and then it creates a sense of thickness in the atmosphere. What I see here, I don't necessarily see that. I'm seeing what is probably just standard fog. This is probably not real, true atmospheric density, and I'm seeing distance fog, and I believe that combination of shaders is to take into account the Switch's hardware, and I have a strong feeling this game is going to run very smoothly. It's going to have very strong performance based on my analysis of the sort of the screen processing that they use. Is they have a strong understanding of what the Switch is good at and what it's not good at. This is totally opposite to games like Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet, where to me it was very clear that the teams that were working on those games did not really have a strong understanding of what the Switch was bad at doing, and so they tried to implement all these visual effects that ended up causing performance implications. But the team clearly has more experience in terms of how to keep things running smooth. The animations here just absolutely charmed me immediately, especially like this animation here. They use a significant amount of squash and stretch, which is animation philosophy that you often see, say for example like Looney Tunes, where things sort of stretch and they launch, and you see that, say for example, the biggest example would be with One Piece for squash and stretch animation when Luffy uses his Gum Gum powers, or Gomu Gomu no powers, and we see that kind of stuff in Smash Bros. Games as well, where characters sort of squash themselves and then they stretch when they have an impact frame. This here is one of my favorite animations during the whole bit, is that combination. You can see Luigi squishing, and you can see it really gives him a sense of charging up an attack, and then he stretches as he launches Mario up into the air. It's really brilliant. It's so charming. So the animation, the animators here, it's clear they have an immense amount of animation. They may be taking cues from Mario Wonder, where we see that people respond very well to a lively and stylized animation style. And I'm so glad we're at a point in the game industry for the developers out there who are actually trying to make good games and good experiences for players, and not just trying to milk them for money. Those developers, I really love seeing them take the industry to the next step, where we can focus on expression like this really fantastic visual expression. So something I really like that they've done here is using smear shapes. This is again a design philosophy from 2D animation, where he turns into a shape to express a sense of speed. He's moving so fast that you can't even express it visually. Here's another example of smear shapes. This is something you often see in cartoons, and it's so interesting to me. So whoever the visual director is for this, the animation director, I have a huge amount of respect for whoever that is, and I would like to, I'd love to sit down and have a lunch and a drink with whoever that is, and I'd like to discuss their philosophy for animating on this. So that's really fantastic. Something I really like here is the attention to detail for Mario's eyes when he is performing this animation. You can see if you pause at just the right moments, his eyes stay locked on the shell. I'm not doing a good job of showing that. I need to figure out how to play this in slower motion. So his eyes look at the shell, and then right before he delivers an impact frame to kick, his eyes are locked on the frame, and then he looks directly at the target where the shell is going to be launched toward. And I really like that attention to detail. That's the kind of stuff that makes things feel alive. In previous generations of gaming, that would have just taken so much effort and time that I do not believe we would have done that. But in this situation, it's here, and it really makes the characters feel that much more alive. That sort of eyes looking at their attention of focus. So I really like that. And lastly, I really enjoy this One Piece vibe where they're sailing on their Brothership. And it looks like they're exploring and going from island to island. This really gives, infinite potential for the setups in terms of the locations that they can visit. This is really fantastic. I'm not sure if I'll get a chance to actually play this when it does come out, because I have a pretty stacked schedule when it comes to working on my own games, and I've got a lot of games to finish and launch. I actually have a new game launching on the Switch on the 20th, which is either today for some people or tomorrow for some people. So I've got a new game launching on the Switch as well, and I have more coming in another 2 months or so. Anyway, hope you enjoyed watching this video. If there's any other details that you notice that you really like, that I didn't mention, please feel free to mention that. If there's any other games you'd like me to cover, please let me know. And if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, if you'd like to see my homebrew games that I've got coming up, because I love making games for old consoles as well, please feel free to subscribe. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you in the comment section. Take care of yourselves, everyone. And man, we got a lot of cool games to look forward to, don't we? Take care.